Welcome, Bronco Nation. This very exciting series. I got Ron Counts on today, and we're going to be discussing a little series I'm liking to call 10 and 10, where we're going to be covering the top 10 questions facing Boise State football in 10 separate, right about 10-minute segments. I'm, of course, Bronco Blameyer. With me today is Ron Counts from the Idaho Statesman. For great Boise State coverage all season long, make sure that you follow Ron. Make sure you follow Idaho Statesman on Twitter. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel, of course. And then Ron is also going to be writing an accompanying article with each of these videos, going a little bit more in depth about what we discussed today. So make sure that you go and subscribe to the Idaho Statesman as well, so you don't miss out on any of that great content. Thank you all for being here, and let's get to the questions. All right, so the question for today is, what will Bush Hamdan's offense look like here in 2023? New offensive coordinator for Boise State. We referenced this a little bit in our last video, so make sure you go check that out. We were talking about whether or not Boise State will break their single season rushing record. There was a great discussion. But for today, we're talking about Bush Hamdan's offense, a new hire for Boise State. Boise State, of course, has been hurting an offensive coordinator quite a bit. You know, not that they haven't had great guys come to that position, but it's been a lot of instability. I mean, that's just kind of the Boise State tradition. You build up these great offensive coordinators, they get snapped up by other positions, but it definitely has hurt some of those quarterbacks in the past. Hank Bachmeier, you know, came in with a lot of promise, a lot of talent, ended up having three different offensive coordinators throughout the 4 years that he was at Boise State, and that definitely didn't help him in his development at all. Boise State has invested in this position. That was something that Brian Harsin was calling for before he left, and Boise State seems to be heeding that call now. They put in a $400,000 salary for Bush Hamdan coming in. That's only $25,000 less than Spencer Danielson, the current defensive coordinator, so great salary for an incoming hire. But the offensive coordinator issues have kind of plagued Avalos' tenure so far, and it's definitely something that he is putting in the effort to correct. Were you surprised at all by this hire, or is this pretty much where you expected Boise State to go? I know I did a video talking about these offensive coordinators Boise State might look at. Hamdan was in my top three, but he wasn't my number one. Is this pretty much where you thought Boise State would go with this hire?
I was kind of in the same boat you were. You know, Hamdan was on my list, but he was the fourth or fifth guy on that list. I was a little bit surprised because of that, but then at the same time, you know, when you look at how much Andy Avalos loves keeping this thing in the family and hiring former Boise State guys, it wasn't a surprise there. And when you look at Bush Hamdan's resume, I mean, you really can't be surprised. You know, he's coached receivers at Florida. He's been an OC at Arkansas State, Davidson, Washington. He coached quarterbacks with the Falcons. Guess who he worked with? Matt Ryan, pretty darn good quarterback to work with. And then he was the quarterback coach at Mizzou. So this guy's got the resume. He's got the talent. And so I think this is a great move for Boise State.
Well, you talk about that multi-experience, I know, not just as an offensive coordinator, but also as a quarterbacks coach, as a wide receiver coach. And I think definitely that quarterback element was something that Andy Avalos was looking at when he brought in this hire, wanting to develop this exciting talent that we've talked about in Taylor Green, talked about him in our first video, wanted to bring in somebody who could develop that talent properly. And Hamdan has that experience, you know, 13 plus years of experience as an offensive coordinator or quarterbacks coach. He was 3 times offensive coordinator, Arkansas State, Davidson, and Washington there, 3 different stints. He was quarterback coach at all of those locations as well. He also adds experience at Maryland, Colorado, Florida, the Falcons, as you mentioned, is most recently at Missouri. At Arizona State, when we're trying to figure out what his offense is going to look like, at Arizona State in 2013, he had a 202.1 yards passing average, 205.7 yards rushing average, 407.8 yards total offense overall. In Davidson in 2014, it was 218 yards per game passing average, 143.3 yards rushing yards per game, and then total offense was 361.3 yards. And in Washington in 2018, 234.4 yards passing, 176.3 yards rushing, and 414.6 yards total. So balanced attack, but also a heavy emphasis on the rushing game as well. Based on that discussion, based on those numbers, what do you think Hamdan's offense is going to look like here in 2023? And then secondly, do you think that he's going to be able to mesh and meld Andy Avalos' visions and goals into this offense better than what Tim Plow did? Because that, of course, was a major sticking point. Tim Plow came in with one idea, didn't send to mesh with Andy Avalos. They never seemed to be able to get on the same page. So do you think that, A, what will the offense look like? And B, do you think that offense will meld more with what Andy Avalos is looking to do for the team here in 2023?
I think they're going to lean heavily on the running game, especially with all the star power they have in that backfield. You know, Andy Avalos is an old school coach. He was a linebacker. He wants to control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. He wants to focus on that running game. They have the talent to do it. And Hamdan's offenses have always leaned on that running game. In 2014 at Davidson, they ran the ball 37 times a game, averaged almost 150 yards a game. In 2018 at Washington, they led the Pac-12 with 564 total carries. And then in 2019 at Washington, they again averaged 35 carries a game, almost 150 yards a game. So that's going to continue this year. Last year, Boise State averaged 39 rushing attempts a game, almost 200 yards a game. I can see them being back around that 39 to 40 attempt range, again, especially with the talent they have in the backfield. But they want to control the line of scrimmage. They want to control the clock, and the running game is how you do that. Now, beyond the running game, a big thing Bush Hamdan's done this year is that he's taken some of the pressure off of Taylor Green. So when Tim Plow came in, he was really proud of the fact that he puts a lot on his quarterback's shoulders. He said he trains them like they're NFL guys. And with Hank Bachmeier, that obviously just did not work. And that's not a shot at Hank. It's just there were so many things, it just didn't work. So now, instead of the quarterback being the guy that's IDing the fronts and calling the protections, the center is going to have a lot more on his plate this year. The center is going to handle those calls, so that's going to be a lot easier. Hamdan thinks that that's going to let Taylor Green play a lot more fast, let him play a lot more naturally, lean on his instincts, and it's just going to be easier for them. So I think taking some pressure off the quarterback and leaning on the running game is going to make them very successful. And to answer the second part of your question, yes, I think Andy Avalos and Bush Hamdan are going to be a way more cohesive unit than he and Tim Plow were.
Now, Bush Hamdan was a quarterback at Boise State from 2004 to 2008. So he's experienced a lot of different mentors in his time while he was playing and his 13-plus year coaching experience. Is there anybody you think that plays maybe a heavier role in how he's developing this offense, that he's drawing points from at all?
Well, I think obviously, Bush Hamdan has taken a lot from guys like Chris Peterson and Elijah Drinkwitz, certainly. But a lot of his understanding of the run game and really a lot of his offensive philosophy comes from his time with the Atlanta Falcons. They were still running a Kyle Shanahan system there, and the big points of that system are no matter what the play is, whether it's a run, whether it's a sweep, whether it's a pass, the fronts look the same, the sets look the same, and there's always plays off of it. So if you have a mid-zone in the same formation, you could have a mid-zone run, you could have a quarterback keeper, you could have a play-action pass. So they're going to make all the sets look the same, but Taylor Green in the offense is going to have plenty of options. And Taylor Green is going to have the freedom to change some of those plays of the line. Hamdan told me that earlier. He's not going to go crazy with that. Hamdan said that in his experience, that only happens maybe 20% of the time. But when Taylor Green sees it, he's going to be able to adjust at the line. So that's going to help a lot.
Is there a pressure at Boise State to be like the offenses of the past when you're starting to develop these concepts?
Absolutely. I mean, there's always pressure at this school. When you think about it, I mean, who's the one guy that every quarterback at Boise State gets compared to? Kellen Moore. Right? What era does every team get compared to? The Kellen Moore era, that 2008 to that 2012 era. So there's always pressure. People here want to win, and I think it's important this year. It's really important this year for this offense to work because, as you mentioned, these coordinator issues have kind of plagued Avalos. And if you look back, they played Harsin in the last few years of his tenure here. They went from Zach Hill to Eric Keesaw. There was several different OCs there, so they've got to get this nailed down, and they've got to win this year because Andy Avalos is beloved in Boise State. But if this offense falls apart again this year, that seat might start getting hot.
Well, briefly here at the end, do you think that this is the stability Boise State needs at the offensive coordinator position? We've talked about all those different guys shuffling through for one reason or another. Is this their multi-year guy? Well,
the tough thing at Boise State in the past was the money aspect, and you mentioned it. They're investing in that position now. So now, yeah, I mean, with Hamdan making $400,000, there's no reason for him to jump to a Pac-12 team next year. There's no reason for him to go to Arizona State next year. So I think that investment's a huge part. And again, I think them bringing in a Boise State guy helps. Boise State players are beloved here. Andy Avalos loves the brotherhood. He always talks about the brotherhood. So I think, even if they kind of fall off this year, I'd be absolutely shocked if Hamdan somehow got fired this year. I mean, they'd have to be absolutely terrible. So I think they're going to have success, but it is important for them to have that success because if they don't, that seat's going to get hot, like I mentioned.
Well, we've focused on the offense, the first 3 videos here in the series. We've got another 7 great videos in the series. The next 2 are going to be looking at the defense specifically. So make sure that you like and subscribe to the Idaho Statesman. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Make sure you like Ron's channel, Ron's Twitter, sorry. Make sure you go and like Ron's Twitter as well so you don't miss out on any of this great content. Ron, as a reminder, is also writing an article to accompany each of these. So make sure you go read that. It's going to go much more in depth on each of these items. The next question that we're going to be discussing is who will replace Matlock as the unquestioned leader on the defense. The video I look forward to doing. Make sure that you guys don't miss it. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for watching. As always, like, subscribe, and go Big Blue.